This episode of the WP Minute is brought to you by OmniSend. Do you sell stuff online? Then you need to meet OmniSend, the powerful yet refreshingly intuitive email and SMS tool that helps you make $73 for every dollar spent. OmniSend is that good and effective. You probably know the struggles of investing in digital ads with no guarantee it'll bring money back into your pocket. Use OmniSend and you won't have to find creative ways to make your audience notice you. You just talk straight to them. Use OmniSend pop-ups to build a contact list, then send campaigns directly to people who already want to hear from you. Automate everything with OmniSend. Just set it up once, sit back, and watch those sales roll in. If this sounds too good to be true, check it out at omnisend.com. Visit omnisend.com. Tell them thanks for sponsoring the WP Minute. Cory Miller, welcome to the WP Minute.
Thanks, my friend Matt.
Man, you have a storied background in WordPress. I think a lot of the folks listening to this know a lot of it about what you've been up to. Obviously, post status, iThemes, but you got a new role, which we're going to dive into in a little bit. A2 hosting, community growth lead, community WordPress evangelist. I mean, it's like the same titles. You and I, we're sharing the same titles. Yeah, it's all the things. We're cultivating relationships, connecting people with our respective brands, talking about WordPress. We're going to dive into that in a little bit. You just got back from WordCamp Canada. How was it?
It was fantastic. I tell you, it'd been, I think, 7 years since I've been back to Canada for a WordCamp. Went to WordCamp Ottawa back in the day, and it was great to be back. So we're excited. I'm excited too, because for a nation to have a camp like that in our backyard, big community there, and just to see them start something new in the first year is always that groundbreaking year. And I got to say, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if you've organized WordCamps. I don't think you have. I know
way back, WordCamp Providence, Rhode Island.
Oh, wow.
I did fundraise. This was like one of my first forays into the WordPress community. And they were like, oh, does anybody know how to do fundraising? I'm like, yeah, I can. So they gave me the role. And the first place I called was Dunkin' Donuts. Because in my head, right? In my head, because back then, like, it was the Providence had the dunk is what it was called. It was where Providence College plays basketball. It was a venue, a sports arena / venue. So I was like, well, obviously I'm going to go for the person who has the most money, Dunkin' Donuts, right? And they were like, no, we can't go for that kind of sponsor. I'm like, well, what backwards reality are we in here? I'm trying to raise some money. But anyway, sorry, that was my foray into organizing a WordCamp.
I love that. I think they're so incredible. I've probably been to 50 of them over the years. But my little secret is I've never been on an organizing team. I just go, hey, no, you all are passionate. You do the work. I want to help and support and tell you thank you and all that we can do to support you. Because it's such a tough job. You know that from that. It's all volunteer work and passion work. And I think the organizers are the last people to, really get a true thank you for that. So I always just kind of show up and go, what can I do? If you need me to fold up chairs, I'll do that. But this being the first one, and the organizing team is so incredible. We want it to go into the future. So this is us saying, thank you. We support you. We're here. This is a long-term thing. But as you know, since the pandemic, it just kind of obliterated some of the WordCamps, and they're trying to get back on their legs and stuff. And so it was important to be there for this one, to help this kind of get restarted, because they feel like it's just kind of taking some more time to get WordCamps back off the ground. And
recently, James Drew, there was a recent, it wasn't a study, but it was a write-up on make.wordpress that new WordCamp goers are on the decline. James Drew wrote up recently something to the effect of like, hey, we need to hit a younger audience. And that could mean many things. Like that could mean real young, or that could mean 20 to 29, right? Because that's a demographic I don't see much of in traditional WordPress community. But what was your takeaway from Canada? Did it look like new people, young people? What did it feel like? What did the vibe feel like?
That's a great question. I have been around long enough where I've got friends at most of these.
You're like, I'm still young. I was there.
I'm definitely not young. I showed a picture, by the way, WordCamp Chicago I found 2010 in my talk. And I was like, I'm not this young anymore. I
Yeah, yeah,
was, I don't know, 33 or some four. And I'm like now 48. So I feel like the old, the elder walking in, but, a lot of, faces that I know for sure, but then a mix of people still doing cool stuff with WordPress that showed up. And it's just, it just takes time and effort for people to, block off from their workday. And met a lot of WordPress agency owners across Canada. And it's exciting to see that there's still, the fires are still burning,
yeah,
despite everything that's happened.
yeah. I was trying to explain this to somebody the other day that WordCamps, we can debate topics being presented at WordCamps. Like, should I go to a WordCamp? Yes or no. A lot of people just like look at the agenda and like, I don't want any of this development stuff. Maybe I want more, business stuff, or maybe I want more marketing stuff, or maybe I just want to know how to use WordPress. Like you guys are talking about building blocks and JavaScript. Like that's not for me. I just want to know how to use this platform. I think one of the great things is there are days. I forget. I don't know if they call them training days. I forget what the name of it is. It's like the first day. It's not the contributor day. Well, the contributor day is there, but don't most WordCamps also have a day where you can just show up and be like, help me, like
Help with your website.
help me with this thing.
I haven't seen that recently. I think there's probably still there. It's not say it isn't, but I remember what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Hey, you need WordPress help. This is like an all day genius bar kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or happiness bar. And they had that there too. And I saw people there, which is great. Cause the hard thing with WordCamps is trying to hit all these avatars, all the different use cases. And I think that's, what you might be alluding to is just, it's tough for like, an agency owner. They're out there trying to sell client work, deliver client work, and then to come and it feels probably more networking across the times I've been around, where I get it. They're very passionate about WordPress. They kind of come to network with their colleagues, but for something just for them. In fact, one of the people that works for Automatic and is a full-time contributor to the community project, and I'm slipping on her name. I'm still in travel fog, but very passionate about, and it was mentioned like at WordPress agency summit. And I was like, hey, we're all in. I think there's a lot of build for that, but a focus thing to just help those like you who have ran an agency in the past, what you're doing, and talk about those key issues. So I hope that happens.
Yeah. There's, speaking about being the old people in the room, I don't know what it is. I guess it's a human thing where like we've seen it before. Like we've seen the Pressnomics, the Prestige Conf, Post Status. When you were partnered with Brian, did a on-site call. Again, a lot of this stuff is pre-COVID, which is obviously a huge, speed bump in how we were all getting together. But we've seen these events. What was the one? Loop Conf was the one that Ryan, I think, Sullivan did. Like we've seen all this before, and we're like, oh yeah, like we have those, we've had those. So it's almost like we forget that these new people coming in are like, no, we want more content. We want different content. We want that business, or we want hardcore development. And I'm hoping that the foundation and the WordCamp teams are starting to think in that. And I hope it's more open, because I think even Matt's recent summer, I think he called it like the summer address, or like the summer update of WordPress. He mentioned about themes, like themes in WordPress.org. Hey, we should be a little bit more loose. We should be a little bit, more lenient on like the strict, here's a theme and here's what it should do. Like, I hope that kind of spreads into the WordCamps, because I don't see any other way to really facilitate these different tracks. And I know the work is in motion, but with most things open source in WordPress, it's going to take some time. But I really hope, that this stuff really, kicks in, because I think a lot of people want it.
I totally agree. Back to your original thought on this about like how to bring in new users. I'm going to probably mispronounce his name, but I got to meet Hamanti, who runs and started WordCamp Nepal. And he lives in Canada now, but his whole talk was about how he did that. And it was an interesting note. So he's obviously passionate about WordPress. He's a developer, and he was like, how do we build the momentum for WordCamp Nepal and this? So they went to the colleges and they started training people in WordPress. And you're like, that's incredible. That's what we need. Get to, like you said, the new people to WordPress, perhaps the younger generation, help them see, like, look at this awesome platform. an ecosystem and get them in. We need those type of things, I think, coming back into the ecosystem. And his was a great example. He showed pictures of the WordCamp and all the people, and it was a lot of young people
Yeah.
that kind of getting into tech and then doing this particularly. And I think we need more of that, but it was a great example of what we probably need to start doing, I think, as
Yeah.
an ecosystem.
I haven't been following the story closely. If anyone else has and has some details, and really, I should just ask because I know a lot of them, but I think there's a new, as an example, there's a WordCamp, the meetup in the UK, WordPress meetup UK, but I think there's like the official one, an unofficial one that's happening, and to me, and again, I've just loosely heard about this stuff. I should really dig into it. But when I hear that, I understand as somebody who ran a WordPress meetup locally to me in, the corner of nowhere. You've been here before, Cory. We're not in a big area. I can understand like the bureaucracy, the red tape, like, oh, you got to do this. And it's just like, hey, I'm just trying to get people together to talk about WordPress. Like, do I have to do all this stuff, or will you just let me get 5 or 6 people in a coffee shop and I can use Meetup? So, and when I hear that, when I see like, hey, there's an official and an unofficial in the UK, which is obviously a big map to cover, I can understand like, look, there's got to be some loose agreements here on how this works. Like, what are we getting for the official WordPress meetups, and what are we missing on the other side? So if we don't do the official channel, like what are we missing? Is it topics? Is it funding? I don't even think they do that anymore. They used to pay for like pizza, the meetup page, and it gets inside of WordPress. But do we have to jump through all these hoops to get that, or just let us meet up and connect with WordPress?
Yeah.
Like, that's the best part about it.
People with that spark of passion that want to just get community built locally and started. How do we just get out of the way a little bit, but give you enough resources to get that going? Because, Katie Richards, that my colleague at A2 and I have talked, she's done a ton of community work. We've had that conversation about how do we support meetups, because all of this stuff started from like you doing it in your local community, building that enthusiasm, energy for what it's doing and connecting into something bigger that built into these. And they're a huge part of the marketing. They're a huge part of the community support where we're all remote. So when we get to actually like rub elbows and talk shop like we did at WordCamp Canada, it's such a good time to gel that, like, okay, there's other people just as passionate as me out there. But I think you've grounded it back into, it needs to start very, very local. And how do we resource that?
Yeah. I'm taking a guess. I'm forgetting. I've got great notes today, as you can tell. But I think your talk title was "Everything Will Be Okay."
My talk was actually about burnout and recovery, and I said recovering from a couple of years ago. And this is something we've shared before, but really getting a little distance from that and sharing how I was off for 6 months of work. Like, did not work. First time in my career, I'd been really like, did not feel I could work, did not want to go to work. And so sharing the before, the build up to that, how that 6 months was kind of crazy, and resetting for me now. And then some takeaways for how to do work better for who I am now, what I can do. Like I was mentioning, I'm older now. I can't just grind. I've got to take care of my body, got to maybe slow things down a little bit, which is tough.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I feel like that's part of, even if we didn't have pandemic, I think us that do remote work, you and I, and most of WordPress, is we're kind of in our little home offices doing cool stuff. And maybe we're meeting on Zoom, but we're not getting as much of that social interaction. And you know how it is. I think you and I personally talked about these things, just like living the entrepreneurial life is a plus 100 to all that, because it's, you're grinding, you're doing these things just like you do with this. You've got a day job, you do these other things because you're passionate about it. But over time, how that kind of builds up, and you're like, I just don't want to be near a computer.
Yeah. Yeah. There's Yeah, I mean, multiple times of burnout, and I guess that could just mean different. It's different severities. At least this is my opinion. I'm no specialist, and maybe you have some insight into this. But there's different levels of it, but I can feel it when I'm just like I don't want to do the thing anymore. Like I can feel myself like whatever it is, right? It could be piece of content that I've been working on for years, the podcast, and like I can feel it because I'm like. I avoid it. I avoid it. I'm not even telling myself don't do it. I'm avoiding it at all costs. And then a week goes by and I start to realize, wait a minute, you've been avoiding this thing. It's because it's not getting done, and you're not happy about it not getting done, and you're also like mad that you still wanted like that you're fighting your own self to do it. And then that's when I start to realize, oh my God, I need to either shift gears or reevaluate. Sometimes it's just reevaluating the priorities of it and starting with like something super simple to just like get back into the rhythm of things. But then there's just major shifts where I can feel this thing on repeat. Don't want to do it anymore. Not happy with it. I got to find something else and really change that trajectory of the thing that's burning me out. Do you have like an indicator that you recognize, that you lean into when you're like, oh God, I can feel it coming and I need to adjust and strategize?
You just shared my talk, basically. Well done. I mean, you're already recognizing it.
Yeah.
So the World Health Organization is where I came kind of look at when I was going through it and all that. Cause I was like, okay, I'm obviously burned out, but I've crashed. It's not even the indicators. I've crashed. And looking back, the three they use is energy depletion or exhaustion, feelings of negativism or cynicism, and the third is professional efficacy. And how I translate that is, and you just shared that, like you're consciously aware of those things. Me, I was like go go go, but it was no progress.
Yeah,
feelings of like things aren't. I'm not. What I'm doing isn't working now. You and I raise our hands. Entrepreneurship, you can just say right there, boom.
yeah.
But like in any kind of work, is I'm not getting things done. I don't feel any progress. Second one that hit me was bad attitude. And you're oftentimes the person I can vent to professionally about some of these, and you have. Thank you, by the way. Is like when it's not working, I start to get a bad attitude about it. Like it's just, and that's where that negativity, cynicism, for me, it was frustration led to anger, led to resentment, led to bitterness. And I had gotten there where nothing's working. I'm bitter. And, in retrospect, it's always easier, but, looking how it kind of dominoed down when frustration isn't handled properly, how did it go to anger for myself and reflection? The last, I'll say, this was the inciting event for me, Matt, because those two, at any point, if I'd been open about it, you and I had been talking, I've been like, you probably saw it, but really bad attitude, right? Not making progress. But the third was key. I think this is the one that tripped. Everything just kind of fell apart. Was I broke my foot, the physical part of it. And I was mentally and emotionally exhausted from the other two, but the third was the one that everything came crashing down. I broke my foot racing barefoot my kids in the backyard, and I just happened to, it's called the seismoid on your big toe, happened to hit a rock right perfectly. And there's supposed to be, I guess, two bones that kind of fuse together when you're a kid, and it just little bitty fracture in that foot. There's nothing I could do about it. There's no surgery. It would just make it worse. So I limped around for 4 or 5 months on a post-op boot because that was the only thing I could do that wouldn't hurt. But what they did physically to me is just kind of tilt my body. And almost 3 years later, I've just now starting to feel better because that little break kind of cascaded through my body, limping around. My hips are out, my back. Those of us that sit in a chair and do computer work all day kind of resonate with that, I'm sure. But that was the point. I was like, wait a minute, body. You've been just the go. You can just go, go, go. And I was pushing it to it and it just broke. So I put the picture up of, your car dashboard and all the lights, the speed is 0, everything's off, and it's just lights going broken. That's how I felt.
Yeah.
But if that event didn't happen, I probably would have kept trying, to go. But that's what really okay, now Cory, I tried to come back to my work. I think I was probably talking to you about all this during this time too, Matt. I tried to go back after winter break in 2021, and I couldn't get near a computer without feeling sick. There's nothing wrong with nothing was going on in my stomach or anything, but my stomach would hurt. My energy would just vanish. It was like, and I'd have to go lay down. And I was like, hold on a minute. What is this? Because I've prided myself on work, enjoying work.
Yeah, there's in the business specifically that maybe you and I are in. But as I'm talking out loud, I'm also thinking about like when I was running the agency, like I felt it the same. I felt like the same things happen. But I think there's, and maybe you have some better insight into this, but there's probably some direct correlation to like how much you care about the work that you're doing to how much this impacts you. Like if I didn't care, right, about content that I was putting out or clients I was serving, and maybe that's even too harsh. I think there's if you were doing, even to keep it in the website side of things, like if you just did $1,000 websites, that's what you did. It's $1,000. This is what it is. I do it on repeat. I build the system. I launch. I go. I get customers. I bring them in. I do ads. I bring them in. Launch. Repeat. There's a certain level of like almost like manufacturing there, where maybe you feel like a little bit disconnected from the business, and you can shut the laptop off and go because you're not thinking creatively, like, am I making an impact on these people? Like, am I really helping their businesses? And maybe you are, but especially in this content business or in community business, like you've been in with Post Status, like it's so hard to evaluate, to just be like, okay, revenue. Okay, great, revenue, right? But these are humans that you're trying to like corral and do things with and leave an impact. And man, the emotional roller coaster is off the charts. And, I see this all the time. People are like, best WordPress newsletter, and it's not yours. And you're like, what? Like, I've been doing this, man, for years, and you're my friend. How are you saying this right out loud? Like, I'm just doing this thing forever, and you don't think, but this is all, perspective. Like people might not look at you as your newsletter, but you get so attached to this stuff that it 100%. Has like this visceral impact on you, positive, negative, or neutral. It's a tough space.
So you said the word attached, and you just rang the bell for me right there. Is care so much, but when it went into attachment of it, and you could probably resonate this. One thing I shared, and it really, in reflection occurred to me, is that in 2008 when I started iThemes, I got to put on this fancy. I put like I had AI create this like astronaut's helmet that was glowing. I was like tech entrepreneur, those two. And I fell in love with it. I loved that. It was an identity that resonated with me. But the problem for me was I cared so much, and a lot of things factor into this, but wasn't willing to take that helmet off. Like I didn't want to, I couldn't fathom not being this either. So cared so much. You try to help people, impact and purpose, like you're talking about, 100%. That's the entrepreneurs we are. Purpose and profit, right? Two, they're both. They have to go together. But for me, that care and then survival. Okay, what am I going to do? I want to make a living, that profit part of the purpose. I want to be paid to do this work for other people. And all of that fed into feelings of attachment, where I was like, I couldn't fathom not being off work for 6 months, or not being an entrepreneur. And so I forgot in that whole thing. It sounds obvious now, but I forgot in all that thing through all of these different things you've kind of shared that I say you ditto. It was me. I was the spacesuit, the entrepreneurial tech entrepreneur spacesuit, and didn't, finally through a lot of just growing older and evolving, growing as a person, I hope, realized like that was an old worn out costume for me. And it was okay to maybe there's something else. Yeah. And that's what led me to even put my resume together and even ping A2, my friends over there, and see if there was something, because I was willing to finally take that off and go, okay, I'm very proud of what I've done during that period of time. Maybe there's a point when I become an entrepreneur somewhere way, 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 way down the road. I'm not saying never to that, but like for now, I'm okay taking it off. And that was a lot of work, mental, physical, emotional to get there.
Yeah. There's something, what I've been, I call it practicing, but it's just kind of how I've learned to cope with it, is just literally trying to detach from the work and just say I don't save anything. I save nothing. Videos, MP3s, blog posts. If it's up there, it's there. But I have no backups. There's no backups. I don't want the backups. I don't need it. I don't need 1,000 hard drives filled with the last decade worth of work that I've done, because it is not me, and I don't want to carry it forward because I want to change. Like, I want this to end. Right? This is something I've been thinking about this. This might get a little morbid. We try not to go too deep into this, but I don't want to die suddenly. And you were like, oh, that WordPress guy died. I don't. Yeah. I want to finalize this, hopefully, move on to something else, right? Move on to bigger and better things, or just different things, like not even bigger and better. Right. Like I right now I'm doing another side project called Our Beloved Medium. I'm an executive producer for an audio documentary with a fictional twist on it, celebrating a lot of radio's most impactful moments in history. And it's a 6-part audio documentary, doing it with a producer friend of mine. Never done it before. I know nothing about being an executive producer. Right? I'm fundraising right now and doing some marketing for it, but I'm not I'm not speaking into a microphone for it for the first time. I'm not writing a script. I'm not researching. I'm not creating anything. And I'm like, this is the next thing, whether it's successful or not. Like, this is just like the next thing that I need to keep moving forward to. Little deep,
I heard a bunch
morbid,
in that. No, I'm so glad. Part of us even having this, and thank you for even sharing that and then having the conversation, is to destigmatize, to erase the stigma about these things. Because if we don't get these out, we're going to bottle it up and hurt silently and suffer.
Right.
And that's my story, for sure. It's just, I'd rather bottle those up, keep those to myself, try to deal with them, and then realize I can't. But what I heard in that real quick is, a decade of doing all this, but there's a passion underneath it. It just happened to be focused on WordPress for this last decade, web design work, the internet, things like that. But the passion I've always seen in you is you love this, talking, having these conversations vocally with video, and, having those, getting to the heart, really addressing the conversations. That's a part of you. Now, this is just your friend sharing that perspective. I've seen this over and over. So for maybe a decade, it's been focused on this topic, but you're being willing to change a role and perspective in it. But the passion is what's, to me, is burning underneath that, which is your love for this type of work. That's what I had to push down and get to for me. And I love creative work. So when I took off some of the barriers that helmet, the entrepreneurial helmet, did, and realized like I could actually, if I take one layer off, which is I will work with somebody else, for somebody else. Could I still do the creativity that I love, that drives me? And I found it with this particular role for this season of time. And I'm so thankful for it, because when I could just take off some of that, maybe it was pride, hubris, whatever it was, being the bold entrepreneur kind of thing. Okay, take that off for a second. I can apply the bold, the innovation to other things. And that's what I heard in your story that connects with me. Is there's still a seed that's not burnt out, right? There's this passion, whatever we call it, inside that drives us, keeps our fire going. And when we hit these dead ends, which I have, going, okay, maybe there's another thing I could apply that same thing to. And where I'm thankful they created this role for me. I just said, marketing, I think, is my thing. What would that look like? And they, Paul, the CEO over there, was like, well, this role. And I was like, oh my God, you see me. Yeah. You value me for this. And I want to spend some time in that and not have to worry about these other things I did as an entrepreneur. Yeah.
And it's taking those strengths and you're taking the strengths that you have, the skill set that you've built up, and you're just running it. You're running a new mission with a brand, right? That's the way I see it with Gravity Forms. You obviously love the team at A2. you wouldn't do it if you didn't. I love Gravity Forms because been using it forever, and I love the team and I love the mission. So I go and I take all of my skill set and I say, this is what I'm really good at here. I want to connect with other people, make partnerships, give you ideas on how to run, maybe do things with the product, features, bells and whistles, things like that. And of course, attribute to marketing, because I love that message. And I love the fact that I can represent Gravity Forms and say it's the best form builder for fill in the blank, right? And it's just a mission that I'm attached to and really passionate about, right? And I think that that's like an inroad to be like, it's okay, man. Like, you don't need to, this crazy idea of, running this entrepreneurial empire, because it could still come on, you could still do something, and you're still associated with post status. Obviously, we're going to talk about that in a second, but even the work that you're doing at A2, there's still room there to be like, hey, you know what? Maybe I'll just start spinning up my newsletter and my blog again. And I start that's my creative outlet along with my career. And that's totally fine.
You just really nailed it. When we're talking about care, you care about something, but you also believe in it when you believe in care. And that's something you and I have in common. Like, we wouldn't have done these things if we didn't really believe and care about them. But then that focus, where we're aiming at, you hit those endings. I'm so glad you said that. Like, maybe somebody could say more, but it is a part of life. Mm-hmm. Endings is a part of life. It's just, you look around, it's a cycle, right? And we go, okay, is burnout telling us these things? Like, for me, hey, maybe there's something else and better for me, for the world. But that belief and care, I think, is what we're kind of talking about, that seed below. And could there just be another way to express that in the world? Absolutely. We chose the two businesses we're at because we believe in care. Yeah. So we get to apply these talents to them, but the seed is still there. And if it's aimed somewhere else, and that's what I had put artificial limits on myself by going, I'm an entrepreneur. I can only do this. I can't work for anybody else. I don't want to work. And releasing that helped me to go, oh, I could actually do it for somebody else. Take some of these things off that were like crushing me, focus on these things. And I'm getting to do these deeper. Like, I've done in a very, I would say, more informal way, in my head at least, community and evangelism and all these things.
And you built a business. And you built and sold a business, which is huge. Yeah. Right. Go ahead. I
get to explore that deeper though. This community stuff. Like, what if I just do that?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm in.
Yeah. 100%. There's, from like the business perspective, when you're evaluating this stuff, I think the worst thing, this is just my opinion, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, is when you're stuck in the middle, it's very hard to see, because the middle is actually a safe ground, right? Mm-hmm. And it has those slight like margins where it bounces up and down, right? Where it can be stressful, but it can also be, nice because work's getting done and you're somewhat profitable, but you're not ultra profitable. And this is what I saw, go back to storied history. And my family ran car dealerships for 45 years in our community, but then ran an agency for a decade with my dad. And there's something about like when you're stuck in the middle, especially with an agency role, it's easy to fall in and slot into that, meaning you don't have enough business coming in with enough profitability to expand and scale the business to get to the next step. But at the hard times, you're not small enough to cut back like costs without literally like getting rid of people. You're not small enough because the projects that you're trying to take in are somewhat pretty heavy, right? And you need more of them to get to the next step, but you also need to be profitable to get to that next step too. It's a supremely hard balance. And when you're stuck in that middle ground, it can be hard to identify it because it's seasonal and it can be years long. And you're just like 3-4 years later, like, why haven't we grown? Like, we're not out of business, but we haven't grown. And the hard times are kind of hard, right? Because we can't really shrink it down because we've built up this overhead. It's tough in that business. And I don't know if plugins, I guess software can fall in that same category, where you kind of just stay in the middle. You don't realize it. You're not growing, but you don't want to get rid of it kind of thing. But those are things like when I look at helping anybody with whatever, content creation or business, I'm just like, are you stuck in that middle? And can you either maximize like a huge growth spurt? Like, can you go up market? Are you ready for that? Or is there a way to just like cut the fat and just drop down to a lower level with less overhead. Doesn't mean you're smaller, but you just have less overhead and you can manage it and have more breathing room at the end of the day.
It's funny because I think the best medicine is the hardest to take yourself. But when I hear that, I go, so many times, and this is why I love work, I get to help and support entrepreneurs in this role, but not be one. So I can help because I know I've been there. But it's so tough because you're in this, think about it, as a business owner, your family, your identity, your financial, all the things kind of revolve eventually around the business. And so the middle, when you said that, you're like, you're in the middle of that. Like, okay, if we don't get this project and take this project down and get that revenue, it's not just mine. It is my own family supported by this work. It's also my team and different things. And that just collectively adds up over time. And so it's so different because you go, like someone from the outside could go, oh, you should have separated your identity from your business. Very, very easy to say if you haven't lived it.
Yeah.
Very, very easy to say.
Yeah.
The hard medicine is like, well, let's acknowledge if I don't get that project, I've got to figure something out for my family and my team financially. If I don't keep going, then I'm not surviving. And it's constant survival mode in many times seasons of life of an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And it just all cumulatively adds up. So most of us stumble into this. Not many of us go, I'm going to go do that.
Yeah.
We woke up one day
Yeah.
and had an agency or product business or whatever business it was. And you kind of get in. And that for me, it was just kind of blended over time and it compounded. And I'm like, oh, this isn't working now. I have 2 children. You have kids. Like I didn't want to start the business. Now I do. I want more diversity. So that is the constant struggle. And it's island life. It's in the middle of an ocean by yourself because who can you talk to about these things? You're carrying the world on your shoulders. It's survival mode. How I'm going to eat next, how we're going to do. And that's why it's so isolating. And what I love talking and working with entrepreneurs because I'm like, I get it. This is a tough thing we've chosen to do.
So before we start talking about Post-Status and how you've maybe structured it now and I don't want to say taking a step back, but you're in the primary role at A2. At A2, what other future plans that you have? You just brought on Katie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Katie
connecting with the community, obviously going to WordCamps, like any other big things that you're trying to do with A2 that, that the community should know about?
The biggest thing for us in A2 overall, it's who A2 is. A reflection of them bringing us in to do this new team for them is a reflection of who they've been for 21 years. Done great work internally, haven't always been able to share it out too. But our thing is just the relationship. I don't want to say we have another agency partner program because partner in agency world, it's just like managed hosting. What is affiliate really
link? Here you go.
That doesn't mean those things. And for us, it's just all about relationships. Starting first with, okay, you run an agency. What are the things you're struggling with? What are the challenges you have? And one, we have to show up as your team. You shouldn't have to worry about hosting. If you have to, something's probably off. It's okay. You need to go do your work and be freed up. And then from our team's perspective, Katie and I is, okay, what else could we help with? How can we support you best? Sometimes it's just hearing, okay, I'm dealing with this. Project management is something we hear a lot, right? Okay, cool. Then that kind of could come into connecting them with somebody internally, externally that we know, but also sharing some content that gives them an idea or an inspiration for that challenge, knowing every business owner is different, but that's really what it is, showing up as truly the collaborator. I'm using collaborator, not partner, because partners got so lost meaning in all this. But how do we just show up and go, we're here to help you. What can we do? Yeah. And try to do that. And that's not all clear just yet, but we know some of the issues they struggle with. The other component is, like you said, showing up at WordCamps and just connecting with people. So we'll be at WordCamp US. Our team is in charge of that. This is new for both Katie and I, and so it's going to be fun. But that's just one facet of like how we try to connect with people in person and offline.
I did a stint 3 years at a company called Pagely. I know what it's
Heard of it.
like to show up at an event with a hosting brand on. Oh
Yep.
boy, you probably have a sword under there just in case somebody comes at you. How do you feel, or how did it feel going to the first WordCamp as a host? Because host recommendations, reviews, it is a thing in the WordPress space, and you get some side eyes at the buffet line when you're getting your food for WordCamp. What was it like?
That was interesting being on the other side of that, because it's always working with hosting companies, for sure. On the other side, I tried to show up as me, but it was something like, oh, I should probably know more details about the particular things that we offer. I know the broad strokes for sure. I'm not a technical expert on hosting for sure. I leave that to Brian, our founder, and our leadership team and awesome support team. But I can share values that we espouse and connect to, and then find somebody to help with some of the specific answers. I wouldn't say it was antagonistic at all. I think one thing I've always valued from the hosting industry overall is they do have the money. You can't really run WordPress without hosting. So, but they also support and undergird the things like WordCamp. Like for the sponsorship, it's expensive. An agency owner or a product company might not have the money or feel the value of it, but a hosting has done that. And I hope they keep all of us, not just A2, all the hosting companies recognize, like, if we don't support this, it's going to wane. We have to show up and do that. So there's some responsibility, in my opinion. We showed up. That's why we had a micro booth this year. I'll have to send you a picture so you can share it. But it was like, Katie got me a little stand because we had a shared booth for this year, because our team's still getting budget and things like that together. But it was like, we pulled up the little 8x10 stand. I was like, this is hilarious. But trying to show our support for WordCamp Canada. Next year, when you do it, we'll be better equipped to kind of show up and help really, really, truly support you. Yeah, I think I find it very open. Most people very open. You always get and we want to hear them, the problems that happens. I will say though, you and I could probably guess them right now, what the ones you hear over and over, support, right?
Yeah.
Product for sure is in there, but really the third is value.
Yeah.
And you go, no, we always want to hear that, but we kind of get a sense like we have to do those three things over and over and over at a high clip.
Sure.
And we just know that's part of the job. But the other side is we're trying to explore is how could we show up better for you as a true partner, a collaborator?
Yeah.
We're still figuring that out.
Yeah. This past WordCamp, US, where you and I met. I haven't been on the other side of the booth either until this is the first one with Gravity Forms. And I was just like, wow, a lot of work, a lot more work than I thought went into, setting up a booth, let alone a standard booth. Like, it wasn't anything, crazy. Like, we have the astronaut suit and we have the VR setup and maybe a couple extra TVs. But, then you look at some of the big players, like, I don't know, Jetpack, Elementor, Bluehost, and you're like, oh my God, this is forever. But the costs, even for Gravity Forms, astronomical, right? And it really has me worried about the future of funding for WordCamp. So, there's definitely going to be some play there in how we structure these in-person events, maybe bringing it down to a certain number count, just the pillar events in the different continents, and maybe that's what we ended up with. But costs and everything are quite high, and a lot of work at the same time. Wrapping up, folks are wondering, hey, what about this post status thing? You got it. It's yours. You brought on Yoast as partners a few-ish years ago. I'm forgetting when. Last year.
Yep.
How do you do like a 10% post status thing? Like, how do you keep that balance now so that you can keep everything under control and not, burn out and get overwhelmed with having dual roles and being a dad?
Right. Thankfully, we've had Michelle Frechette for a couple years now, and in January, naming her as our executive director to have a point person, someone energetic as she is, kind of keeping the flame alive at post status. So it's in really, really good hands. So I can step away. And Yost, Marika, and I are owners of post status, and we all feel passionate it needs to exist in the world, even if I had to step away. There's another thing that kind of played into all of this, which is, can that business support full-time team? And at the moment it couldn't. Last year with economic stuff happening, a lot of the same companies we're talking about, hosting companies, which are our sponsors, as you know, a common frustration you and I share, had to cut budgets. And the first thing to go is sponsored media. And so that was simultaneously with me stepping aside or back, was, okay, the fuel, the money that supports this just wasn't there. It kind of went out because of all these conditions and things. And so stepping aside was, one, to keep it going and lighter financially while we kind of get through this, rough season financially for us, to get on the other side. And if we can just survive through it, keep community there, glued together, going, which is, Michelle is awesome at that. And frankly, Slack community just kind of goes because we crave it. We crave that interaction with our colleagues, to get to the other side when things start coming back, which we're already hearing indicators of. It's a constant frustration you and I have shared, that we need support for media within WordPress or it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
That's just a fact.
Yeah.
So we need these to come back. We need those budgets to come back. The people running those want it to happen. It's just, and I see this from the other side now. It's like, okay, we got to make it happen as best we can. And so that all played into it. And also my personal journey. It was time for me to kind of take the hat off, not be the operator of that, let somebody else that has energy like Michelle run it and get through this patch and start to try to build on to what we were doing.
Yeah. There's an interesting demographic. I posted about this earlier this year as like so what I'm looking for, forecast for the year. What do you, I forget.
Yeah.
The word is escaping me right now. I made a prediction in the start of January, that, we're going to see a new type of person enter the community. And I've been talking about this a little bit on the show is, younger, yes, but also coming into the space, like, I only know page builders. So really I'm here to work with WordPress, but I don't love WordPress. Like, I'm not in love with WordPress, which might be a good thing for some of us to realize. But like, they don't know the community because they came in from a whole other thing, and they were never like at a WordCamp trying to figure out how to do the thing with WordPress like we were 15 years ago, right? Because it's all been solved, right? It's either solved in the page builder or WordPress itself has already solved it. So they're not hacking away in the hallways, sitting on the floor with me, you, Pippin, like all these people like from back in the day, like trying to do this thing with EDD and all this other stuff. So there's a whole new type of person. I'm curious, one, maybe from the A2 perspective, but also from the post status perspective, there's like a whole set of folks, which I'll put in a box in Facebook groups. And then those, from what I gather, none of them few of them know about post status, Slack. Like, it's two totally different worlds, two totally different types of folks. I've been trying to spend some time getting to know that crowd and what they're after and what they're looking for in WordPress. From what I can tell, a lot of them are looking more from like the business side. Like, hey, this is just a tool for us. We like it. We like the tool that we're using. We're actually super passionate about the tool that we think it's the best tool. But we're also really here to just like grow a business. Yeah, I'll go to a WordCamp, but I'm not in it like you guys are. Do you feel that? And do you have ways that maybe you'll try to like bridge that gap, if at all, with either post status or work at A2?
Well, for both post status and A2, we felt like we're talking about what I think is in the bubble, the people that really are passionate about WordPress, the community, and it is almost like an awesome tool to build web projects. But there's so many people out there that aren't in the boat. They're not going to come to WordCamp, but they do use it as a tool. Maybe it's not the only tool, but it's a tool. And I think there's so many more of those out there. They just haven't crossed the threshold and gone into a WordCamp or shown up at a post status, or, they may be reading and listening to WP Minute, but kind of as, okay, that was one tool. Like at WordCamp Canada, there's a couple of WordPressers now who have now shifted into Drupal, and you go, those are great tools too.
Yeah.
But so I agree. I think it's like the WordCamp DePaul organizers going to the colleges and people interested in tech going, here's a thing called WordPress. It is a tool that they can use and perhaps make a great career out of it. But I think you're right. Like we need to go outside of the bubble and also realize they're not going to get a tattoo of WordPress on themselves.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but they do believe in the core philosophies, but they're not going to say it's just this. And there's so much opportunity out there and people doing really good work. So connecting with that from A2 and Post says for sure our focus, because, like this camp particularly is like, you do see a lot of the people that are there and they're there because they really believe and care about it. But there's so many more that go, awesome tool, cool.
Yeah.
Let's get out there. That's just the harder work to
Yeah.
reach them, but we need to do that. And we are trying to do that in both those companies.
Last question. One of the things I've been trying to unpack, and I can't, like, I'm really struggling with like trying to articulate this, and maybe you can help me. You're really trying to explain like the value of open source and open source WordPress, right? To be critical of WordPress, but not to like hinder it from thriving, right? Like you don't want to say it's terrible. You can say it's terrible, but you don't want to believe that it's terrible, right? If that's your feeling, because it's only going to detract from the overall, bigger picture and the longevity of the project. What I've been trying to say is it's okay to, and this is the part I'm struggling with, and I don't know how to frame it. Maybe you can help me. Like to take from WordPress. Like you can also take from WordPress, meaning just use it. And don't get consumed by it where you are either get burned out or get hindered to the point where like you just want to throw your hands up and just say it's not worth it for me to even care anymore. So it's okay to take from WordPress, whether it's a service, you start a services business, you are creating a plugin and selling it, you're doing courses, you're doing content, whatever it is. It's okay to absorb that because that's what everyone else is doing. But at the same time, don't forget to invest in WordPress.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time like packaging that as a statement, but that's the way I feel. Like some people, it's okay, man. Like it's whenever you give back and contribute back to this project, however it is that you're doing it, whether you're a cheerleader or a core developer, as long as you're doing that, and then it's okay to say, I'm also profiting from this too. I'm taking my piece of this too, because that's what everyone else is doing. And I'm not going to worry so much that I'm the one that's getting left behind. That's what I struggle with. As you can tell, I don't know if you have a different thought on that.
I fully agree with you. Like the overwhelming majority of people that use WordPress probably don't get back in the sense that we all think somehow we should.
Right.
But I think that's a misnomer. And I think what you're saying is, come in, it's okay. You should. That's why we did this. That's why we all have contributed to it. Continue to use it, however you can. There's very simple guidelines, which is if you, with the GPL and things, but otherwise, like that's the purpose. That's why people contribute. The other thing I would probably add to yours and say I wholly agree with all of it is, okay, when you get going and you're using it and you're seeing the power and you're thankful that it's here, that you got to do that. Then not that you have to pay this huge cosmic debt back, but like it's as simple, giving back, contributing as simple as helping somebody else or mentioning WordPress is a great tool, the tool, maybe even if you feel that passionate about it, and being an evangelist for WordPress. I mean, I think we get, because it's a code project, and I've felt this, if I can't contribute code to it, I'm not giving back. That's a misnomer, but I've held that for a long time. I'm not a developer, all this stuff, but could I talk about it, share it, use it in my business, say, by the way, we build this on WordPress and part of this is it's free and open source. And so many people, 40+% of the internet have built on this because of thousands and thousands of people over 21 years have contributed to it. That's contributing. That's evangelizing WordPress to others. And like this person that organized in Nepal, helping train, whatever those strengths, gifts are that you have, using that for the benefit of open source, 1,000%. And I think we've probably do it internally, but we make it bigger debt than we think it is, where it just should come out of thankfulness.
Yeah. Yeah. Cory
and
Miller,
your own strength.
Cory Miller, the guy that I talk to publicly and record podcasts with publicly, is the same conversations he and I have behind the scenes with just fewer expletives. A2 hosting, post status. Any special links you want folks to go and visit for either A2 hosting or post status?
I think those are great. You can always find me. I try to be as open and approachable as possible, but you can find me on Twitter and LinkedIn, all those things too. But both those things is, like you said, belief and care. So if you're interested in something we've talked about and what I'm doing and I can help you, I'm here.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Cory. Thanks for hanging out today.
Thanks, brother.